Welcome back to the Creating Distance podcast hosted by TA Sales. I'm your host, Tom Alaimo. Some people call me Tommy Tahoe. And each week on Fridays, we'll be bringing you an episode to break down with salespeople and sales leaders the top tips, tactics, strategies, stories that you need to get to the next level of your career and up-level yourself. So let's get into it.
Right. Lisa Killeen, Enterprise Sales Leader at Monday.com. Welcome to the pod. How are you?
Great, Tom. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. I'm loving I've already given you this compliment, but I'm loving the green room. For anyone that's watching this on YouTube, it's a very,
Thank you.
It's a very relaxing shade of green to be watching on a call.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that. Some people have said it's a bit moody, but yeah, I like the dark moody colors here in Chicago. It gets me, feels cozy.
Yeah, I love it. Cool. So I want to jump in. I've been fortunate enough to work with you, a decent amount throughout this year through some work while you were at Vidyard, some of the consulting that you've done and helped some of the clients at TA Sales and got to know, you and your style. And it seems like one thing that feels like a constant or a consistent theme from some of your last few roles, currently at Monday, previously at Vidyard, Asana, maybe even a little bit of LinkedIn, is the transition from, a PLG to an SLG motion, product-led growth over to sales-led growth for those that are following along. So I'd love to just hear, we can get into the specifics and the tactics, but is that intentional? Is that you like that flavor of a transition or what's interesting to you about that has made that a consistent theme of going after that as part of a sales leadership role?
Yeah. I think when we've spoken about this before, I've mentioned the last couple of organizations where it's been really critical to do that. But I actually think if I am very real about it, it goes back to early days of LinkedIn. And maybe even beyond that. I think I've always joined organizations. I've been really passionate about the product and what it does because, of course, as a seller, you really want to put something exciting in front of your buyer and something that you can prove value around. But, when I think back about, early days at LinkedIn, this was a network that was growing. We were trying to figure out how to monetize it and how do we really put the product in front of people. And it just kind of lit like wildfire. And that's amazing, except I think the sales fundamentals and the foundation of the skill set that's required, especially as you go up market, and we certainly saw that at LinkedIn, you've got to tie an amazing product to real business challenges and objectives and outcomes that, really the C-suite care about. And it's certainly been, just super important, I think, especially as we hit maybe the post-COVID era and a lot of companies who had incredible products hit the space where their sellers were used to just, taking leads, figuring out how the product fit and going with it. And we missed some of the sales skills and the fundamentals required when those leads dry up. And so, I've been lucky to be a part of, and going back even further than LinkedIn, companies where we didn't have the name recognition, we didn't have a product recognition. And so knowing how important that sales skill set has definitely driven me in the last couple of organizations when, the product has been in a huge growth mode, but we haven't necessarily been super successful selling up market or teaching salespeople the fundamentals. And because I have done that from day one in my career, I'm really passionate about it. So I do seek leadership roles that require that SLG motion and, need to build it in order to be successful.
What do you think the difference is between a rep that can succeed in a PLG motion versus what skill, if their company was transitioning to SLG and it's like, hey, we need you to evolve, what would be the key things that you would want them to learn and develop from?
Yeah, I think it definitely becomes more important like I said, when you're asking for larger investments.
Yeah.
So I think, reps that have learned the product, are passionate about the product, and can translate that simply to business problems. That's just like, to put it in its simplest terms, that's the skill that I think is really, really important. And I don't care if you're selling SMB or if you are a part of a PLG motion. Sometimes even in PLG, when the leads are, flooding in, it's great because you've got people that are really passionate about the product, but you get really in the weeds of maybe the features, the benefits, the things they like the most. And of course you want, really passionate users. But to translate that into how that is solving business problems is the value add that will continue to bring those customers back to you again and again, to think about larger growth opportunities and to displace competitors. So I think just that translation of like, these are the things that makes our product great, but this is the problem that's that it's solving, and this is the things that I'm hearing your C-suite.
One question that, and we'll talk, it feels like the two lanes that you really focus on, like we're saying, are sales-led growth and then helping a company drive, more into the enterprise. And to me, one thing that comes up when I'm talking to sellers or leaders that are focused on that, or a skill gap, is around business acumen, right? If you have an inbound lead that loves using the product and it's just more of a transactional, what does this cost? It's a 5-figure investment, and it's like, great, we can get that done in 2 weeks, versus 6, 7, 8-figure deals that take a lot of time and energy, also involve a much more elevated conversation.
That's right.
And there's a question that came up. It was like, how do I get better at that? That actually came up on one of the trainings from one of our clients. And I thought that was an interesting question of like, all right, I do want to get better at this. I want to get promoted to that next level. How do I grow as a seller, or maybe even as a leader, in terms of my business acumen and really up-leveling the types of conversations I can have?
Yeah, I think, no matter whether, like I said, whether you're an aspiring enterprise seller and you're really focused on that business acumen, or I think I see a lot of enterprise sellers fall into this trap where, our buyers are, data shows two different things about our buyers. One, they are incredibly well informed before they enter the conversation. Many of them don't even talk to a seller before making a buying decision. That's number one. I feel like, that's been on a slide that, we've told the story about at multiple organizations, and the evolution of sales. So buyers are they're different. They're well informed, they're well educated. So they're coming in, and you're probably more likely, even when the deal is, 6 figures, multiple millions of dollars, bigger deals, they can feel just the same, where we're getting straight into the weeds because they've done that education up front before even having the conversation, if you're lucky to get the conversation. So that's number one. And then number two is that we know that there's a ton of different influencers, and the buying circle is bigger and bigger, and deals, especially at that level, have a much higher level of scrutiny, especially today. CTOs, CFOs, CEOs are signing off on what would have in the past, gone through a VP approval. And so when I think about the difference in the business acumen and that skill set that's required, sometimes your customers will get on a call with you and you're immediately in the weeds. You're selling, something, you're selling a product that, is focused on, solving for a marketing team. And immediately you're talking about the company's challenges, about what how their marketing team is going to, through their narrative, and what they're, what they're investing in. But I think the real business acumen is to help and do the research up front that helps control that conversation and pull it out 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 levels to begin with. So doing research is number one. It's even easier today than it ever was. I've coached and taught business acumen and how to research prior to getting on calls. And now I'm like, just go to ChatGPT. Let's start there, and let's pull in what we see are a company's challenges, what are the company's objectives, their financial goals for the year, and what do we think they're probably having they're having internally problem solving those challenges or meeting those objectives. And asking that at the higher level and doing that higher level research, because your customers are going to get straight into the weeds about what matters to that decision maker or that business unit. And that might be 3 levels lower than a CEO. But again, if you are getting good at business acumen, it's just a framework of research that I think you can tick the box, become a really highly educated seller prior to any type of conversation, even if you're at a lower level conversation to begin with. And it will allow you to get deeper in the questions that you're getting answered. It'll also show you like, hey, I think this is what I know. And I see, based on even ChatGPT, there's a couple of holes in my research. And I want either to validate that in this conversation, or I want to hone in on it and tell them like, hey, these are the things that I learned when I was preparing for this meeting, and tell me about, hey, you're head of marketing, but like, tell me what your CEO cares about. I just read this about, your new CEO, and you're trying to grow by 30% this year. So it's about leveling up. I think the research and thinking about the business goals, challenges, all those things, rather than like, hey, I just want to know about this digital marketing team and we're already in the weeds on, my solution, and it's easy to go straight into pitch.
Yeah. What's your stance on first call? You're having that type of a conversation. You're leading with a point of view, which is something that we train on. A lot of people on this podcast have suggested come with a POV, point of view of like what might be happening. What's your stance on, I come to you, we're having that conversation, and you're my buyer, and I'm leading that from like a visual slide standpoint, or just keeping it conversational on the first call?
Yeah, super controversial. And I feel like, some
of all the
teachers
controversial things we could talk about, I feel comfortable with that one, but yes.
Look, I think that we have evolved. We sell over Zoom, and so people are very visual. And I think that if there's a certain amount of research that you've done and there's a bit of data in there that you could guide the conversation into a deeper level, the first call to me is, and the reason why you do the research up front, so I'll tackle that versus the visual. But the reason why you do the research up front is because most of those calls last 30 minutes. You have, 5-10 minutes of rapport, and boom, like you only have a very short period of time, not to do your full discovery. You're always doing discovery, but to like do the bit that matters the most, that gets you the next meeting and gets you, as deep as possible. The only way to do that is to do that, have a point of view. When you state your point of view in your research, you're adding your credibility, but you're also stating maybe the answers to the 2 first discovery questions that someone who isn't well educated or researched coming in, that you've already nailed that. You've told them, you saw their head nod on the call. So cool. We're down into 3 or question 3 or 4, and I didn't have to ask the first 2. I think it, depending on what the level is, I think if you set that structure up, in a conversational way, and you set the tone in, hey, I've done my research, I want to ask you a few questions, and the objective of this call is, then fine. I don't think you need a visual, but I think that we are such visual people that if there is a story to tell, that you could put it into a repeatable process to create a slide, it's going to take it to the next level. But you can also switch back and forth, like take it back off of, so it's just on camera. But I don't have I've encouraged reps, especially, to maybe in the first call, to have, if they've done the research, you want to show it. And if there's something to, kind of like, use that as a springboard into a deeper conversation, sure. But I think you can do it just as easily, and sometimes better, just video, person.
Yeah. And what I have to imagine, I've not done a PLG sales motion really. And so I can only assume, but I would imagine if a company is making that transition, they don't necessarily have the enterprise blood in the DNA of the company yet. So that's part of your job and other people's jobs to inject that. And you might need to teach people about how do enterprise deals get done, and it's different. To me, enterprise deals oftentimes get done in person with the whiteboard, in a conference room, over a meal, so on and so forth. So I'd be curious, do you see it that way, or are you seeing a lot of enterprise deals still getting done remote? You don't need to visit, you don't need to get on site, or maybe it's a blended answer depending on like deal size and things like that. What's your stance on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definite stance on in person. I think, especially today, I think people want to be in front of you. So leveraging both an on-site where you can bring, a mix of your experts. So it's value add for the team, but then you're also bringing leaders on site so that you can match that from an exec relationship standpoint. Sometimes the only time you're ever going to get that done is if you make the choice to travel. And so a lot of times it's not just about travel, it's about who you bring and who you get to the table on the other side. And that can make or break, especially an enterprise deal. So huge fan of on-site. I think it has to be a part of, your strategic accounts. It definitely matters on deal size. And it definitely matters about the audience. If you're going to take a day, I actually have one of my reps is on site today and I'm not there because we are doing a training that needs to be done. We're going to tick that box with that customer, but we've brought that support. We've got value being added so that we can move to that next level. And then we have an on-site with execs and, I'll be present. So I think like just picking and choosing and being really smart as an enterprise seller, using your time wisely. You can't be on a plane all the time. You got to tick, a million other Zooms off the, sales process box. So it has to be a combination of both. But I think I would start every single quarter with here's my top accounts and here's the on-sites that I am going to be at. And I'm communicating that to my leader and I need you to be here on this date. And this is why and who's going to be there.
Yeah. To me, that is an interesting segue to something that we have been working actually with a team on, which is around, and I think one of your specialties, if I were to say, which is around really like strategic account prep and planning. And I know one of the exercises that you brought from, just different places that you've worked with on your teams is kind of like taking a step back, separating your accounts into different quadrants and kind of being able to plan different plays around, each of those types of quadrants based on like what type of customer is this, so that you can spend your time in the right way. Because a lot of times, especially the bigger deals that you might sell in enterprise, where your time goes in the 80-20 rule is very real. And so if you're spending a lot of time on these lower, threshold accounts, these minnows, you're not going to have any time and energy to do the extra, to get on that plane or to do the extra research or find the connection on your boards that can help you land the whale. So maybe just briefly can walk through what are those quadrants, if someone's listening to this and like, man, I do need to kind of prioritize my accounts a little bit differently, and just like a high level of what those are.
Yeah. I mean, this because we've taught this framework a couple times, but I think what I have found over the years is that it is just as important for, I've led teams, just pure account executive hunters, with just a very small handful of accounts to go after. And even with 10 accounts, you really need to make sure that you're spending your time wisely. I've also done this with account managers who I think, we're speaking about this morning. You've got maybe a large volume of accounts, and it's very difficult to really know even your customers. And if I asked you to put them into quadrants, a large portion would be like, I have no idea. I don't know about this customer at all. And so I've just seen the prioritization and just kind of it work really as a territory plan that you can revisit quarter over quarter to understand where you spend your time. And on the account management side, I think it really can be a difficult, a really difficult job saying no to a customer because they are a high spending customer. And I ask my sellers to ask themselves constantly, is this a growth account? And when am I expecting the growth? And when can I commit to that growth And that should determine how much time I'm spending on that. I mean, that's even as an account manager, like that in fiscal or in quarter revenue, it is where I'm going to spend my time. Now, I think I'll walk you through the quadrants, but I think there's also a portion of your book where you need to be able to always have an always on approach. And there's definitely accounts that have a longer term play, especially in the enterprise, that require a lot of effort. They might have a 6, 12, 18-month sales cycle to them. And if you don't put effort into them now and you're just putting effort into the things that are right in front of you, your pipeline's going to dry up in a quarter or two. So the top left is developing. A developing account typically is a high growth potential opportunity, but maybe you don't have the relationships, the industry, or the use case is a bit tougher. We've only got a small foothold, maybe with one product if we're a multi-product company, and effort is required. And we don't really have the exact relationships, and I need to do work on what I could solve for. So I need to do more research on their business objectives, the challenges that they're having, in order to really start to drive conversations there. So I would probably start with groundswell. I would talk to users. I would really understand their business before I try to go after those VPs and C-suite conversations. They're also probably a large business that buys tools, tech, in a very potentially decentralized way, complex way. Maybe the leadership has changed, so it can fall into that bucket, but it needs effort, and it needs probably help from the rest of the people that sellers usually have around them. A BDR, maybe their CSM with a low footprint. If they're an account manager, we need to have a good health score and a good use case to build off of, and so we've got kind of a plan of attack as a group. Top right is my strategic accounts. They're the ones that I can see growth in immediately. And when I say immediately, like in the fiscal we're in, I typically won't allow, I always have my reps defend where they're hitting the accounts. And so I don't want to see accounts in the top right that I don't think I can win this fiscal. We've got momentum. It's okay to have gaps. Like if we have an exec relationship that still needs work, that's fine. But we have a use case. We've got momentum from existing relationships. Health of the customer is good. If I'm a new business person, I've got a really strong use case. I've got maybe a champion going. I need to go towards the top, and I've started to uncover a bigger opportunity. And then below the fold is transactional. That's the bottom left. So it's not as much growth, and it's they are smaller customers. And I think when I talk about PLG, the companies moving from PLG to SLG or really going up market, I would say a lot of even enterprise books of business can feel like a little bit of mid-market. Like you got a mix of them. They're not really like, I didn't just get 10 of our biggest customers. I'm still working a pretty big book. And you need that. I think like the best enterprise reps, even in a mature market or business that I've seen, have a lot more opportunities volume wise. And they've got a mix of those run rate deals that are smaller so they can hunt the whales and bring those in too. And transactional is where you get some of that always on. They're not going to be a super strategic approach. And maybe they're not, more of an organic growth business. So you can go there. Your bottom right is the potential for strategic. They're quicker wins. They typically are businesses that are growing, maybe kind of medium spend if you're an AM, and they absolutely could be potential strategic, but they also probably buy in a centralized way, and it's easier to navigate them. And so they're a good way to spend for the medium-sized deals. So they all kind of typically, I've run this in a lot of different businesses, and they typically have different, spins based on product and what we're going after. But I think that they all can translate into really tactical plays that sellers can like take a bite size every single week and go, hey, I got my 10 accounts over here in developing. I'm going to take one and I'm going to do these two things with it.
Something that I'm curious about, Lisa, and maybe this question gets asked you started somewhat recently at Monday. Maybe this was asked
Yeah.
in your interview process there or other places. But I'm curious, as a sales leader, what do you think your superpower is, or your competitive differentiator? Like, what do you feel like makes you unique as a sales leader?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've spent a lot of time like building, and being a builder, I think in like sales these days as a leader is a really strong skill set to have. And it can be like, hey, I'm building a new team, or I'm building some sales fundamentals, I'm building new process or strategy for the business, I'm building talent, I'm building a team from scratch. And so I think just being a builder has been my superpower. I've joined companies and teams because I've got that skill set and I'm willing to come in and roll up my sleeves, and I think look under the hood and be under the hood with my team in order to really understand the customer and the deals, so that I can then take that strategy and try and make change at the business level so we can be successful. I think that combo, though, has been that I've also come in and fixed things too. So, like when we say, hey, we're at a PLG motion, we're trying to go to SLG, building is great. But sometimes you have to really have a keen eye of the things that need to be fixed so that you can then build upon them. And, I think that ultimately, again, I'm willing to be in it with my people to listen, learn to both them and our customers, and try and translate that into here's the areas we should be focusing on. Yeah, and it's just time spent.
So if you come into a new situation and it's one of these scenarios that we're talking about, you're going from PLG to SLG, or hey, we need to get up market, or hey, this team is just a shit show and we need someone to come in and figure it out, because there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah.
How do you know where to start?
I mean, I think it's with the people. Like, first of all, you got to know who's around you. Because honestly, I think there's the talent around you, whether or not they have been at the company for a while and they're, just experts in the product, or they've listened, they've had so many at bats with the customer. It's such a learning opportunity. If they're brand new and they're figuring it out, they've maybe been hired or you're hiring them to have a different skill set. It's just about spending time with people. And I think you get immediately into the deals that matter, or the things that they're struggling with, or the things that are working. And so I always find the quickest path is spend time with people, structured approach. Like every single week, we're going to go, I want to listen to calls. Honestly, I love Gong, huge, huge fan. But I am also best when I'm like, hey, let's jump into this deal. Let me get in front of a customer. Let me try and help and understand. I'm currently in, April, May, June, July. I'm in like month 4. And it's just about getting into deals, understanding how we're pricing, what proposals are we putting on the table? How does this work? And asking a bunch of questions. I feel like most people, especially if you're a leader, spending time with your people, they want that. They want, you can learn as much from them and they can help you get up to speed, but you can immediately start to like try and add some value. But it's just, it's given me the quickest path to ramp, time and time again.
So if you're coming in to a situation and, you need to first understand, like, do we have the right people on board? Like, what are the attributes? What tells you meet me, we start talking, what tells you that I want Tom on my team to build or turn around the situation, versus I don't want, John, because of these other reasons?
Yeah. I mean, one, I think you just have to be really open. Personally, I feel like the other secret sauce that I have is I've seen a lot of different, movies, and I've seen a lot of different situations. And so I have had a lot of at-bats of, different talent and different organizations. And so I've got that experience, but I try to really go in. I mean, every team is different. Every person is different. And the fastest way for me to get that opinion of you and to feel like I understand is that if my rep lets me in, like, am I immediately involved in deals? Is this person just being open about, hey, here's where I'm struggling, and here's a deal that I want to work on with you. So the openness to letting me in is the fastest way. Even if I feel like, hey, Tom's got some gaps that we need to focus on, my immediate thumbs up is like, this is someone who's like, I need you in this deal. This is the situation. Here's where I need help. Here's my own personal self-assessment, but I'm letting you in. So that's been the fastest. I try and translate that in a like pre-read about me as a leader. Like, I'm an incredibly open book, and you can ask me anything. I'm going to be really open with you. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. You're going to teach me about the product. I need the same from you as fast as possible. That will give me, definitely an opinion, but it will definitely make me, invest the time as fast as I can in the individuals on my team. And it's tough. You got a new leader. It's like hard to sometimes let them in, or maybe you've been there for a while and you're like, hey, she's onboarding. I like the, open the book.
Does that feel harder in a remote environment versus, I'm making an assumption that back maybe in LinkedIn pre-COVID days, you were in the office, but does it feel different?
I was, yeah. Yeah, it definitely feels different. I've been remote for probably I've been remote since COVID. I haven't returned to an office with an organization. And it is definitely, it's difficult to be the new leader, to be, and potentially have multiple people that are in an office. I think you just have to adapt. I mean, it's just kind of like everything else. I think showing vulnerability as a leader and immediately being curious, and within a couple of meetings, if people can sense a level of commitment and a level of consistency, and I'm present with you and I'm going to follow up and do what I do, those are the things that I try and do immediately. Like, I'm creating that trust, whether we're remote or not. And it's just showing up every single time, like, prepared. And here's the things that I want to, that we're going to accomplish together. So, I think it's just about adapting, because I don't see that changing for me personally, just as someone who has been remote. You just have to be great at it, because even if we were in person, there's like, especially for enterprise teams, we're on the road. You have to be able to connect, lead, coach, remotely, really effectively.
Yeah. Okay. I want to hit you with a couple rapid fires.
Towards
great. The end here. So, this is coming. I think you have a book recommendation, something that you're reading right now, and you made sure you had it pulled up. So I don't know if it's we're open to any suggestions: fiction, nonfiction, sales, non-sales. We don't care. It sounds like there's one that's caught your attention recently.
Yeah, I really, I will give a shout out. Actually, it was someone who presented and was a speaker for us at Vidyard, company I just recently moved from into Monday from, and it's David Premier. It's not Premier, it's Premier, and it's Sell the Way You Buy, and I think it really just speaks to a lot of it feels very fundamental, but it goes back to my point about value selling and doing the research up front. If you think about the way that your buyers are, wanting to speak, they may want to go straight into the weeds about your product or their specific question. But it's really selling, the way you buy and thinking about the buyer first. That feels like something that has continued to last as a real fundamental skill set as sales continues to evolve. So I really like David. I think he spent a bunch of time at Salesforce and just has really relatable approach to sellers. And again, you've asked me, what's that one thing that we can do to upskill ourselves? Just put yourself in the buyer's shoes. And I think he does a really good job there in that book.
Yeah, love it.
Breaking it down.
Okay, speaking of that, what is something that has caught your attention recently as a buyer, whether it was a cold email or cold call that landed a meeting, or if you have bought something even personally where there was a salesperson that was interesting, good or bad? Anything come to mind on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've been kind of in this debate recently, which is cold calls are dead. And I think I already know your answer on that because I've been a part of you teaching your boot camp. But I think the thing that's caught me by surprise and that I take more often now than I ever have before is a cold call. I I really believe that even if the cold call doesn't land you that deal, if I take a cold call, it's typically from a junior rep, a BDR trying to get a meeting. I will always listen to what they have to say and their elevator pitch. And then I ask for a follow-up because I'm also in the business of educating myself on what's next. Yep. Took a call from an AI, I think phone dialer. I'd never heard of it before. I wanted to be educated. Whether or not I'm going to buy it or I have any kind of budgetary responsibility is, questionable. But, I think just taking a cold call and listening to what's new is such a critical thing for leaders to do today. It's how I learn about what my team should be doing. And it's also, I think, evolving the way that I think about how sales gets done. You just have to be incredibly creative on how to reach a buyer these days. And I think it continues to take me by surprise. And I feel like it's a conversation I'm always having with other sales leaders that aren't necessarily, sold on maybe a cold call. And I don't know if that's the specific answer. I don't think it's the silver bullet, but it's like, sellers have to be really, really creative in order to catch the attention of the buyer. So when I'm the buyer, any way you can do it creatively is going to work.
Pick up the phone. Call Lisa if you sell anything to sales leaders.
Put my cell phone out here.
That'll be in the description of the podcast.
Great.
Cool. So the second to last question I have for you that I ask everyone is, who would you want to see come on this podcast next? But the caveat is that you have to know them or be able to. I can reference you in an email, so it can't be someone completely random, like Oprah or something. Yeah.
You know what? The first person that just popped in my mind is someone who I've seen do a lot more thought-provoking posts, and someone who I just adore and have known from early days and has just grown into the most amazing leader. And her name is Stephanie Medina at LinkedIn. I absolutely adore her. And she just gets rave reviews from the people that work for her. And I think she's an incredible leader. And I'd love for you to pick her brain.
Okay. Love it. Lisa, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your wisdom. Want to give you the opportunity before we hop off to share where people can connect with you, on LinkedIn or otherwise. Anything else you want to plug personally or for Monday or anything else?
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, please connect me with me on LinkedIn. I am always, I think the place that has always stood out to me that has defined my work experience is LinkedIn. I'm still hugely passionate about the network, about the sales solutions product in particular, even though I spent a ton of time on the talent side, because I've been a salesperson for 25 years, and the evolution of sales is where I have continued to build my career on and learn from and coach around. And so, hit me up on LinkedIn, please. We have an incredible amount coming out at Monday for a whole host of multi-product approaches for businesses to do work better. So please watch this space. We've got an incredible customer event coming up in September called Elevate in New York City. But really, we are a work platform that continues to be redefined, and it's just an incredible business to be a part of.
Well, congrats on the new gig. Thanks again for the time, Lisa, and look forward to catching you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for checking out that episode. Two quick things as a takeaway. Number one, we would feel honored if you left a review wherever you're listening to this podcast, if it's on Spotify or Apple or YouTube, to just let us know how we're doing, what else you'd like to see. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can check us out at tasales.co. Love to hear from you there. Much love. Have a great week.